of it all, untouchable, a new animal. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made.
Hey guys, what's going on? We are back with another video, and this week we're going to be covering more of the Lunging with Purpose series. This is the very next day, so if you saw the last video last week, this is the next day from there. And this one, we're going to be introducing a saddle to him. So this is going to be more along the lines of getting started with our colt starting and less about lunging, although there will still be quite a few lunging exercises and ideas that we'll be covering here, but mostly lunging, getting those transitions down, getting that horse started, getting him to where he understands our space, our cues, and our commands. Because like we said in the last video, this is where all of our transitions are taught. So I want to have my horse really aware of what a transition is, how that happens, so I do not have to kick him when I get on his back. If I've done my job well here, then we won't have to worry about that, and my transitions will come along naturally, and they'll stick with him for the rest of his life, and we won't have to be booting him to get him to move up. So our spurs can mean something else other than just move forward. I want to have good, responsive cues in my voice so that my legs are free to do other stuff. So with that being said, we're lunging this horse again today. We still have a bit of tension, although we're starting to kind of get to the bottom of him a little bit here and losing all those little battles. So in the last video, we talked about winning the war. When I get control of his mind and he loses those little battles and I put him in those tight spots, like when I pulled him forward and I got him to move his shoulders, or like here when I'm stepping into him and getting the control of his body, when he loses that control and he has to give that stuff up, I'm winning the overall war towards getting control of his mind, getting control of his body. So we see him start to relax and we see him start to submit a bit more to me and my program and everything that I'm doing. So every time I get him out, I'm trying to build on it. So in the last one, we kind of rocked his world a little bit, and now we're kind of easing that, building on that, but I want to keep moving forward. So I want to keep introducing new things to him so he doesn't get bored and then look for ways out. So I still have a lot of holes to fix here. I still have a lot of things I want to work on, but I'm to the point now, it's time to introduce a saddle, because like that big lean in his body is not going to get fixed without the saddle. So I don't know how much work this horse has had in his life lunging, but it's to the point now where nothing I'm going to do on the ground is really going to solve it. So pushing him out in the circle helps, bumping his face helps, but it's to the point now I need a saddle, I need a bridle on him, I need to start taking hold of his face, to take a hold of his legs, to get him to stand back up, because any more lunging at this point in his life kind of just makes it worse. So I've got to get him to where he listens to me on the ground and I can rebalance him. I don't really need to be on his back to fix that yet, although I'm going to have to do some work there. I want to get him more stood up here before we get under saddle so that it's not so awkward and we don't risk him just tripping and falling and putting me in danger. One of the big things about my circle that I didn't get to talk about last time is that I'm on a very fixed length circle here. So I want to make sure he's lunging around me. One of the big things that I see is, we call it lunging the person. Like I always ask people, are you lunging him or is he lunging you? If you're walking a huge circle with your horse, you're not getting the job done. And you're not going to have transitions. You're not going to have up transitions specifically. If I have to chase after him and run towards him, he's going to take off. And then when he goes back to circle, he's going to hit the line and break. So I've seen that a ton in my life where people like lunge at their horse and jump at it with the whip. And then they go for like 4 strides and they break because they hit the chain and they got to make a circle again. I want him to be making good circles. I want him to have good self-carriage on this circle. So what I try to do is plant my left leg here and walk my right leg around it. If I'm going to the right, if I'm going the other direction, I'm going to plant my right leg and walk my left leg around it. That way I'm always stepping forward with my right leg up into his hip so I can drive him up. If I want to make him break down, I'm going to step towards his face with my left leg and pull my line. So it's using that back and forth where we're kind of crossing into his hip or opening into his shoulder, into his face, and stepping that way. That's going to help us a lot down the road when we get on his back and we teach him to steer and turn around. So there's a lot of little things that go into this that I'm going to use to help me skip steps and make progress faster down the road. And that's probably the biggest difference between like a professional's program and what people get at home is I'm working on a lot of different things at once, and I can kind of save time that way. I don't want to come out here and work on just one thing because my horse is going to kind of get bored to it, and it's not going to give his mind enough challenge to where he stays busy. So just like a kid in school, if they're not challenging them, they get bored, they get talkative, they start to visit with their friends. If they're actively being challenged and learning new things, we can kind of keep this exciting, and he's going to be more interested in the lesson. And that's probably the biggest change in our horse here from the last lunging lesson to this one is now you see his neck starting to drop a little bit. His legs are a little less fiery. He's getting a little bit more submissive here, getting a little bit more in tune with our lesson and being a good student, which is really what this is about. So I'm watching the pace of his legs. I'm watching his stride. Here he misses his lead behind, which is unacceptable. And a lot of people will try to fix that by breaking them back down and starting them back up. And that to me is wrong. So I have to think about the why did he pick up the wrong lead behind and not just be like, oh, he's being naughty. So if we go back to this and we look at this, he's got his hip sheared out to the outside. And that's the only reason why he picks up the wrong lead. So he's leaning down with his inside shoulder. He's not going to miss that one. But he is going to miss his lead behind because he's always shearing out. He's not in a good shape here. That has a lot to do with why I stand them up to the outside all the time. If I can get him to hold his ribs up into the outside, then his hip will naturally be in the right position to pick up the correct lead. With that being said, the fix then to get him back on the correct lead is by pushing into his rib cage. And you'll see me sling that whip up into the middle of his body and drive him forward to fix that. We always talk about here that forward will create correctness. So if I can get this horse to drive forward and use his body correctly, he'll have to fix himself. So I'm using that whip. I'm going to sling it up into his body here, step forward into him, and bring the whip up from underneath and hit the middle of his body right here. And that's what's going to make him change leads. If I can get his belly to round up and bring that hind leg back underneath of him correctly, he'll swap back onto the correct lead. So I'm ready with my left hand to keep him on my circle because I'm going to get a lot of speed out of this. I want him to round up and drive, but stay on my circle. So it's going to be a little bit aggressive right here. It's going to be a little bit of friction right here where he tries to figure it out. But if you do this right here, instead of just lobbing the whip at them and letting their body sling out, what will happen is if you don't hold your circle with your left hand when you bring your whip in, then they're going to spin their hip out and they're going to keep going on the wrong lead because they don't respect your shoulders. And that's why getting control of those shoulders was so important first. If he knows to keep his shoulders up to the outside of the circle off my left hand, then I can control his hip and his ribs with my whip and they don't shear out of my circle because I've got his shoulders pushed up and out. If his shoulders will stay pushed up to the outside of the circle, he cannot get his head to the outside or spin his hip to the outside. So get control of that middle section. It has a lot to do with the way we ride him too. If I ride him the same way, using his ribs and shoulder area to get control of his neck, you've heard us preach that a lot before, it will help me so much in getting control of his face and putting it where I want it. If I simply bump his face and don't worry about his shoulder, he's going to spin that hip out. I'm going to lose control of everything behind it. Right now, I really want control of that shoulder. And it's going to be the same thing when I get on his back for the first time. I want control of that shoulder. So in stopping him here, you see him drop his neck. He stays interested in me the whole time. He never looks to the outside. I love how he drops into me when I go to pet his forehead. So that to me is a big deal. It's this horse kind of letting me into his space. He's not avoiding me like he used to be. And I'm going to run my hands all over his body, feel him out. I want to feel his belly. I want to feel his ribs. I want to feel his back. And just make sure he's soft and get an idea of the texture of this horse. If I go to touch his belly and he's like tight and bracy, then I've got more work to do getting this horse comfortable with what we're doing. I want to turn sideways here so you guys can see that. I'm always going to change my chain when I go to change directions, especially in the beginning here, for a couple reasons. One, I want to know, is my horse interested in me? If I go to change the chain and he's looking to the outside and he's not paying attention, I've got more work to do to kind of get this horse focused on me. The other piece of that is I want him to walk off calmly here. So I'm always testing that. Do I get your space? Can I take it away? And now you see how he starts to watch me all the time. If you watch that right ear, he's always got it cocked towards me now. He's always paying attention to me. And that is a huge breakthrough compared to where we started. When I go here, I reach down and pick up the whip. See how he doesn't take off? That to me is huge. I cannot have this horse take off when I go to pick up the whip. I don't want him to be desensitized to the whip. As far as when I crack the whip, boy, you better be going. But I don't want to be scared of the whip either. And you see that a lot when people reach down, they pick up the whip and their horse takes off. Remember, we're going to be doing this under saddle here in just like 2 more lunge sessions. So I'm going to be on his back, and my handler, Macy's, going to grab this line. And when she reaches down to grab that whip, if this horse takes off, I'm in trouble. So I don't want to be scared of the whip, but I want to be respectful of it. So it's going to be my backup. I'm going to go to my voice first. And if I have to go to my whip, I'm rarely going to just crack it idly in the air. If I have to go to my whip, I'm slinging it towards him and I'm cracking him underneath the ribs in the belly. So I'm going to use the end of that whip kind of like a little bug zapper to where I can just pop him underneath rather than just crack it in the air, because they'll get so numb to that and just learn to ignore it. And then your transitions won't be good. So I wanted to cover a little bit of how I use the whip, because this is a tricky thing for a lot of people. What you want to pay attention to is the end of the whip, the very end of the tail. That's your point of impact. And that's what we're really focused on here is you see where this whip reverses direction. We want to be targeting that tip of the whip to be our horse's belly. So when I kiss, I'm targeting their horse's belly and I'm aiming for that spot where my spur would hit, because I've got to get that to transition, right? So if I go to my horse and I want him to move, I've got to have that translate to my leg. So where that tip is so important to getting your horse to respect your whip. So when I sling a whip at a horse, I'm targeting with it. So I'm going to come from underneath. I've got my right hand on the line. I'm going to take my left hand low, and I'm going to bring that whip from my left leg to my right leg. And I'm going to lean forward up into my horse. That gets me the full extension of my whip, the full length of my whip, which I'm going to have. I've got this horse on a 60-foot lunge circle. I need 30 foot of whip out there in order to target his side. So I kind of figure I'm going to pull his head towards me a bit here. My circle's maybe a touch less than 30, probably closer to 20 radius. So I've got to make 20 feet out there. I got to cover that to be able to connect with him and make contact. So that full length of the whip is so important. Straighten my arm out, come in from underneath, and target. You want to be in a balanced position and target with that whip and hold your right arm back to you so you have contact on your horse's face when you go to send him out there. So if we watch the way I use this whip, where I end up pointing is exactly where this whip ends up hitting. So I'm going to stop my arm right now, which is going to end up pointing me where I want that whip to hit. So that's going to be right in the middle of my horse's belly. So I need to come in from underneath, keep that whip low so I can clear it all the way up to his ribs and come in and aim for my horse's belly. So if that whip backs up my kiss, my transitions are going to be way sharper than if I kiss and just pop the whip idly in the air. So you can see on that last one, I actually make contact with the pop bottle and it kind of wobbles a little bit. So I just kiss the edge of it, which is really what I'm looking to do with my horse. I want to just crack that whip, right, barely touch him with it. And that's going to be a pop that's close to him and means something. So when I kiss and it's immediately backed up with this pop right here, that's the oomph that my horse needs to go somewhere. So like I said before, our transitions are no joke. They've got to step up the second we kiss. So by backing up my kiss with this actual like pop on their side, it means something. When I get on their back, I won't have to kick them anymore. So target with this. You see me stop my hand in line with the pop bottle. That's what puts my whip exactly where I want it to be. If I allow my arm to continue through that swing, It's not going to hit where I want it to. So this to me is the only way you're going to get your transitions the way they need to be, as sharp as they need to be. Your up transitions have got to be sharp on our colts. It really is what keeps us safe. I do not want my colt to be non-responsive to my cues. He's got to know that we mean business when we go to step up to him. So using this whip lesson a little bit here, practice at home. It's something that, I mean, set up a pop bottle. It's kind of fun to do. And just try to tag the pop bottle. Try to target specific things, aim for things, and tag them. So I like to think that I can be pretty accurate with my whipping. If I want to hit their hip, if I want to hit their belly, if I want to hit their hock, I can get it, right? So be accurate with your whip. So it's not just slashing and driving your arm all the way through. It's targeting, stopping your thumb in line with whatever you're aiming at is the key. So you've got to take your arm, keep that whip low, so you keep their head low, and target, aim towards something, come in from underneath, and see I stop my arm in line with what I'm going for. That's the key to having a good whip control and getting good upward transitions. So go home, practice this, guys. Get your horse to where he listens to your cues, he listens to your transitions. Use the whip properly to back up your voice, to back up your transitions so that they actually mean something. My horse has got to carry himself around here on the ground. I can't have him kind of half loping around, not really having any drive. I need him to step up. I need him to understand that when I kiss, we mean business. When I kiss, you got to get up, you got to step up, and it's going to be coming from tucking that belly. So we can get a lot of tuck out of our horse by coming in from underneath and getting his rib cage with the whip here when we ask him to lope up. So we can save a lot of time. So I hope you enjoyed this video today, guys. I hope this helps. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please let us know. We're always here for you guys. As always, thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do this without you guys. This has been unbelievable. Your support's been incredible. Keep spreading the word. We'll keep doing what we do, and I'll see you in the next video.
I'm cranking up on the throttle.